Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Burns, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Library Commission's weekly online event where we cover any topics that may be of interest to librarians across the state. We do this every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time live, and we do record. So if you can't watch us live at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays, you can watch any of our now over 2 years worth of recordings out there. We do a mixture of all sorts of things. Yeah. It's been a while. Interviews, book reviews, presentations, little mini training sessions, all sorts of things. And we have commission staff who do sessions, and we have guest speakers. And today we have a mishmash of that.
Because I'm the mish, you're the mash.
Today we are talking about the Nebraska Book Festival, which is coming up May 21st. Yeah. And you can see right there on the screen.
That's almost here, isn't it?
Yeah. You guys ready?
Well, and some of us are.
Yeah. Mary Jo Ryan here at the Library Commission is going to be doing the session first today, so I'll just pass it over to you to get started and take it away.
Thank you, Krista. And thank you, Virginia and Ted, for coming here and joining us for this conversation. We're going to have a conversation here today with Ted Kooser and Virginia Smith, and the two of them will be sharing some of what might be going on at the book festival with us, as well as some of their ideas and thoughts about how the local wonders, our One Book, One Nebraska, evolved, and also how it evolved into a musical play, musical theater production. So I'm going to let them get started. Ted Kooser, who, as you all know, is a local celebrity. He's a poet, and he's actually the former poet laureate of the United States. I believe that's the, how do they say that? To the Library of Congress, the poet laureate consultant to the Library of Congress?
Yes. Yes.
That's right? Okay. Poet laureate consultant to the Library of Congress. And Virginia Smith is with the Nebraska Repertory Theater. She's the artistic director. She's also at the University of Nebraska, a professor of acting and directing, correct?
That's absolutely right.
Okay, well, let's just talk a little tiny bit about local wonders. First of all, it's the One Book, One Nebraska today.
Oh, nice.
All year long, 2011, One Book, One Nebraska. We got people all over the state who are reading this book and talking about this book. Ted just mentioned he's going to Grand Island, to the library.
I'm going to be at the library in Grand Island, and I have a couple of other libraries lined up within the next couple of months. You know, as it works out, I can do that sort of thing, and I'm happy to. I might talk a little bit about the book, about how the book came to be. For many years, I worked for a life insurance company, and my time to write was in the morning before I had to be at the office. So I'd get up at 4:30 or 5, and I would write till about 7, and then I'd get my necktie on. In those days, there was no such thing as business casual. We were still wearing neckties.
Serious.
Yeah, it's business serious, yeah. And so at any rate, I had that time in the morning, and which meant that the things that I was writing were, by necessity, you know, things that I could manage in small blocks of time. And so I would, from time to time, when I wasn't writing a poem, I'd write a little paragraph of prose and you know, set it aside. And in about 2000, I had read a book by Hal Borland called Sundial of the Seasons, in which Hal Borland, who was a columnist, newspaper columnist, had assembled his columns seasonally through the year. And I got to thinking, well, you know, in all my writing, I make a point of commenting on place and weather and so on, and perhaps all these loose pieces I have would fit into seasonal division like this book. So I started going through these folders and putting these things out, and sure enough, the piles were about equal.
That's great.
Spring, summer, fall, and winter. And there was the book all of a sudden. You know, it was... If you look at this book, it looks as if I wrote it during the course of 1 year, but it's really probably 25 years of miscellaneous work that was assembled in that sort of seasonal pattern. And there are lots of poems hidden in there as prose. I took poems that I hadn't published elsewhere and reconfigured them as prose to make it a little bit more welcoming a book. my feeling has always been that when we see a poem, we come across a poem in a book, we kind of go, it's a poem.
Oh, no, I hope you all understand it.
But with prose, we find ourselves reading prose before we even notice that we're reading. Before we've even decided to read, we're reading. And that's the kind of feeling I wanted to get. I wanted people to get past the notion that these were poems and go right into the prose and so on. So it's very interesting. Steve Hilliard was the acting director of the University Press when they took this book on. This was before I had any national celebrity, really. And so, I was a well-known regional writer and so on. But Steve, after they'd accepted the book, I ran into him in the hallway over at the university one day. And he said, we don't have any great aspirations for this book to sell nationally. We think it'll sell quite well regionally. So then it turned out that the University of Nebraska Press took it to the New York Book Expo that year with their other 100 titles, and in this huge warehouse of books from all the publishers in the country. And a woman came walking along and opened it to a passage about a shirt that my mother had made for me that she was moved by, and it turns out that her name is Jill Lamar, and she is the person who selects the books for the Barnes & Noble Discover Great Writers.
Oh, yes, yes.
So off it went. Barnes & Noble picked it up, and it was came in third in their national nonfiction competition and so on. So, I mean, and my literary career is full of lucky breaks like that, and that's very typical of being one of them. No way you could have choreographed that. You couldn't have left that book open to that passage and hoped that someone would come along.
Yeah.
Nothing about it. It was all chance.
Well, lucky breaks built on lots of hard work.
And she was the one that had that passage resonate with her.
Right.
Somebody else coming along just as important. It might not have been that passage, but another one, because it's full of wonderful stuff.
For all we know, somebody just as important came by and didn't like it at all.
Hey, but Barnes & Noble, and I thought that was so funny when I saw that, because I think they called it Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers.
That's right.
And I thought, new writers. Well, I guess
this
you're
guy's
new to them.
This guy's in it, this is pushing 65 at the time.
Oh, but that was great, absolutely. And this book has been a favorite of readers across Nebraska for a long time. And so when it was nominated to be the One Book, One Nebraska this year, we thought, perfect. It's time for the whole state to read this book and to read it together and to talk about it together. And it's been, I think, a lot of fun for a lot of people. We've gotten a lot of great feedback on it. Of course, we always love it when the book that gets nominated is one of the University of Nebraska Press books, because we're so proud of our press here, and they are so supportive of everything we do in libraries. So that's just a win-win. Virginia, how about you? You want to talk about the next step, Local Wonders, the book, Local Wonders, the musical?
Oh, yes, sure. It's an easy story. I've been in Nebraska since 2000, and shortly after getting here, I probably read Winter Morning Walks first, and then I read Local Wonders. And when we first got here, especially my husband and I have an old 1973 GMC hippie wagon. And I believe in Know Your State, so we drove around and looked at a lot of places in Nebraska. And I was reading it around the same time. And from the very first moment that I read it, I thought this would make an interesting play. And so in 2005, I put together a group of pieces that I particularly liked, and we read them at Nebraska Repertory Theater as part of our Destination series. And then we were looking for plays for the next year, and my colleagues said, we think you should write Local Wonders. We think you should get on that and do that. So that's what we did. And what we decided to do, at least it's evolved over a lot of years since 2005, it has now become the day that the fictional day that Ted puts the manuscript of Local Wonders, this marvelous book, into his mailbox. And he's got the manuscript with him, and he's kind of looking over with his wife Kathleen and thinking about the stories that are in it. And so then became a musical on the way. Paul Amanda's my friend, who I've worked with a lot from Chicago, is a composer and primarily a string. He plays guitar. So he did this great folk music that's included in it, and we did it for Nebraska Repertory Theater in 2006, and then lots of work later. We did it in Chicago last December and January. And we're doing it at the Lead Center in October, opening October 19th, playing 19 and 20, taking 21 off, and playing 22 and 23, October 19th through the 23rd, and tickets are available at the Lead Center box office right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
It's part of the new season.
Yes, and it'll be at the Johnny Carson Theater. I'm really excited about it.
Oh, we're thrilled. We're absolutely thrilled. One of the things that we're going to do at the Nebraska Book Festival coming up May 21st is that we're going to have Paul Amandes, who Virginia mentioned, the musician who performs the musical pieces, but then also he was the writer of the music, and he assisted you in writing the play.
Yes, we worked together on adapting Ted's work onto the stage, and then he wrote music to some of Ted's poetry, and then wrote lyrics on other pieces as kind of a reaction to a passage that Ted has written.
So the three of you are going to be on a panel at the book festival, and that should be interesting because you could kind of have some give and take and some conversation about what that was like. Yeah. What was that like to hear your words come out?
Well, I really tried to stay away from, while they were working on it, I really didn't want to know exactly what was happening. I wanted to go and sit in the audience and have it be fresh to me, you know. And I enjoyed that part of it, and it was fresh and quite marvelous, you know, to just walk in there like anybody else and sit down and get to watch it. It's very strange to see yourself portrayed, you know, by somebody else.
Oh gosh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
I can only imagine. And did you feel a kinship with that person, or did you think, oh, now that's not me?
Well, I felt a kinship with that person because it was Dave Landis, and I've known him since he
was Dave Landis.
Since he was this tall.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, you know, I sort of, in a way, kind of forgot that it was me as I was watching it, you know.
Yeah.
Because I was absorbed by it.
You were transported.
Well, in neither production did we try and portray Ted. I mean, nobody did any research on how you move or how you speak or anything like that. Simply because what's important is your great ideas. So we place it in the shack that you talk about, your writer's shack, by looking out over the pond with your uncle's recliner, and you know, just we place it there on that day. But it's really a poet and his wife, and of course we apologize to Kathleen because we have no idea. I mean, there's a woman in the play who is there listening and talking, which makes it easier to, you know, put the material together. But we didn't ask Kathleen if we could do that. We just, every time I see her, I say, uh-oh. No, she's always very gracious.
Well, I think this sounds like it's going to be kind of a fun conversation, and I think Paul will probably sing some of the songs for us as well.
That's what he's planning to do, and he keeps sending me emails. What do you think I should brush up? What do you think I should get in really good shape?
You know, it's so nice to have music that has been composed around my words that is intelligible. You know, so often I have had composers come to me and say, could I just set some of these poems of yours from this and that and the other, and then when they send me the DVD of the performance, you can't even find the poem in the music. You know, every syllable has been stretched out of shape. It is as if the poem is little more than a sort of rack upon which to hang all this music, you know, and it's deeply unsettling. You know, I'm always flattered when anybody wants to take any of my work and use it in some way. I mean, I really like that, and even if they use it in ways in which I'm not, things I'm not really enthusiastic about, I mean, I think that's fine, but but still, don't you know? You kind of wish. Well, couldn't they have at least printed the poem in the program so that the person could have understood it? You know, and because you know you can take a line of poetry and extend it over 10 bars of music, you know, and there's nothing left of the words by that time.
Yeah. It's certainly not the meaning.
And this is, the music for this is, you know, much more hospitable, you know.
Our point was really to have the meaning come forward. And, you know, sometimes the song can be used to make it a more inspirational way of letting that meaning pass and then speaking it. And in some places in the play, we just have a little podium set up, and there's a poetry reading space, and so some of the poems are just simply read.
So it is like this section of the play is like almost like a poetry reading.
Yes, it bounces from segment to segment, but several times the character that plays, the Ted character, goes to the podium and just reads a poem.
Oh, that sounds very dramatic.
Yes, and then sometimes they're sung much more like the idea of musing. It's almost as the poem is coming to him rather than as a way of expressing it to an audience.
Great.
So it's much more personal sometimes.
Well, are you excited to see it again, Ted?
I am, yes.
Because it's been kind of evolving. It's a different actor.
Oh, yeah, I haven't
won't
seen
be
it.
acting. Paul will be acting. Paul Amandes.
Yes, and Ann Hills, a folk singer who has a national reputation, plays Kathleen, and they both play lots of string. Kathleen plays guitar and banjo and harmonica, and Paul plays a guitar, and then we've also added a keyboard. So there's and his name is James Robinson Perrin, and he interacts a little bit and sings to add a third voice to some of the songs.
So it just keeps evolving.
It does. And I directed
They're very
it.
organic.
And I directed it this last time, and we're remounting the same thing that we did in Chicago. And when I write things, I think of them as being something that another director is going to work on.
Yeah.
And so I don't really wrap my mind around things in the same way if I'm directing it, or, you know, it's the same thing with acting. If I'm acting in something, I don't wrap my mind around it. I don't process it in the same way as I do when I direct it. So finally, I wrapped myself around it from a directing point of view. So it's finally what I wanted it to be in my head when I first was thinking about sitting in the motorhome reading it. So that's been a really fun process. But of course, Paul, who also has that image in his head, had to then become an actor in it and do what I said.
How's that working for you?
I think it worked out pretty well.
That's great. Well, we'll be happy to have Paul with us at the festival.
He'll be, you can ask him that then.
Ask him how it's
going to find out all the dirt.
Well, I did want to take a minute to talk a little bit more about the festival, the other things that will be going on at the festival. So let me just switch over if I might get to that. Alrighty, here we go. Oh, I'm learning a new keyboard here for all of you in the audience, so this is taking a little longer than it really needs to, but I'll get it. Okay. If you look at our website, oh, sorry. If you take a look at our website, it's bookfestival.nebraska.gov. There's a lot of information there about the book festival. One thing I wanted to point out is that we do have the schedule up, and it does note that if you notice in the morning, there's some activities at the New Vibe Juice and Java. Timothy Schaffert from here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln will be leading a writer's workshop, and if you don't know Timothy, you need to get to know him. You're going to love him. He's got a new book out, and now I can't think of the name of it. Something Coffins. Oh, come on.
It's gotten tremendous reviews.
Oh, that's the point I wanted to make. Just like Ted said, this book has gotten tremendous reviews. It got a great review in the New York Times. It's been really very well received, and I started reading it, and I'm loving it. I just got started on it. I'll get back to you with the name of that book. But anyway, he's going to be teaching that writer's workshop in the morning. And then we have some poets reading at the same time over at New Vibe Jews and Java. That's
The Coffins of Little Hope.
Krista says the name of the book is The Coffins of Little Hope. And that's Timothy Schoffert's new book. And as I said, it's gotten tremendous reviews. And I think it's going to be a great one. Anyway, Marjorie Sizer will be reading.
Who was watching, actually looking up at the same time, too.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank God we have an audience out there.
Erica Hamilton from the Nebraska Humanities Council, let us know.
Thank you, Erica. When I make a misstep, she's out there helping me, so I got to love that. Marjorie Sizer will be reading from her latest book of poetry. To just kind of fill you all in, the way we do this is every year at the book festival, we ask Nebraska writers to read from their 2010 work. So if they have something that's copyright 2010, they're reading from it. And that's pretty exciting for us because that means people can go out, they can actually get the book, it's not old, it's in stock, they can read it, and they can come and talk to these writers about their work, get their books signed. There will be some books for sale at the museum and also at Novel Idea. So anyway, in the morning, Marjorie Sizer, Barbara Schmitz, Sarah McKinstry Brown, and Roy Scheel will be reading at the same time as Timothy's doing his writer's workshop. And then in the afternoon, we have a variety of readers, Christopher Cartmill, Marilyn Coffey, Mary Helen Stefaniak, Wendy Townley, Desmond Lavelle, and Ted. You'll be reading from Bag in the Wind, your 2010 book.
Yeah, right.
And maybe if we have a few minutes and when we finish talking about the festival schedule, we can ask Ted to tell us a little bit about Bag in the Wind. It's his first children's book, right? Ted's first children's book. All through that time, we'll be having book signings as well so that people can get their books signed. And there will be 2 writers' workshops during that time. Jim Reese is doing a workshop, which is kind of a hybrid writing workshop. Jim is from the University of South Dakota in Yankton. No, not the university, Mount Marty University in Yankton, South Dakota. And then we have a group of poets teaching a poetry workshop they're calling Lightning Writing Prompts. So I think there'll be a lot of writing in this workshop, which is, of course, what we like to do in these writers' workshops. But it's Matt Mason, Jeff Lacey, and Dwayne Spiker, all of whom will be working together in kind of a team teaching setting, teaching poetry writing during that time. Then we'll have a slight break, and we'll have another set of readings. Lynette Krieger will be reading from the Willa Cather Cookbook. Last year, for those of you who don't know, it is a terrific book. Willa Cather Foundation put out a cookbook which included recipes from Willa Cather's time and place, but also a lot of great stuff in between about where the recipes might have shown up in her writing. And it's just really a fun book. I think you'll really like it. Sue Bauman is a Nebraska romance writer, and she writes as, I think, Laura Landon, and she'll be reading from 1 or 2 of her romance books. Jim Reese, again, who was teaching the writing workshop, we're going to make him take a break and get in there and read from his work, Ghost on Third. And James Solheim, who is a well-known children's author from Omaha, he'll be reading from his latest book. And I believe his daughter's going to be there, and they're going to do a little musical accompaniment to their reading. So that should be very fun. We have a short ceremony to announce the Mildred Bennett Award, and that award is always given to a Nebraskan that's done something, or probably usually a lot, in their lives to help support literature, writing, and book selling. And then we have the keynote we've been talking about. Ted and Virginia and Paul Amandes talking about local wonders and how it evolved into a musical theater production. We'll have a little short reception after that, and that'll wrap up the day. So that's our schedule for the day. If anybody has any questions, everything's free of charge. We welcome people from all over the state. We hope to have lots of people come from all over the state. I do want to recommend that you register for writers' workshops. Let me just, I am struggling
That
with
was
it.
my question, Mary Jo. If I wanted to take one of those writers' workshops, which I may,
You would
How do I
register
do
in
it?
advance. You would register in advance. Let me go back here and show you. Can you see I'm having trouble with this? I'm getting it, though. I'm getting it. I'm going to get used to it. Here in event category descriptions under schedule, you can find information about the various events, including the workshops. And if you say you wanted to register for the poetry writing workshop, there's a click right here to register online.
absolutely.
Go in there, and it brings up a registration site where you can just click. It tells a little bit about the workshop and about the poets that will be leading it. And then you click right here and register. Just fill out a form and you've done it. You're done. So yes, please do register. I want to recommend people register as soon as possible. They're usually filled up by the week before the festival, so that's next week. So I really want to recommend that you register as soon as possible and tell your customers at the libraries to register as soon as possible. Let me go real quick so you can see who some of the people are, some more information about them. I mentioned their names. Oh, I see what it did. It popped up a new window. Okay. But I wanted to do this. This thing's got a hair trigger. There we go. Here's all the writers' bios. If you're interested in learning more about all these definitely interesting Nebraska writers, you just go through this, writers' bios. We'll tell you more about everybody. Got some bloody pictures here. Oh, Christopher, that's a good one. And Ted, I love that one of you. So these are the folks that will be reading. That's a good one of Marge with the baseball cap. Virginia, you look very serious.
Very serious. That's me.
So anyway, we look forward to the 21st, which is a week from Saturday. Hopefully everything's ready.
Yeah.
Let me just point out a couple of other things that we've got up here. First, we've been talking a lot about the event in October, which is the Lead Center production of Local Wonders the Musical. I wanted to mention that these performances on the 22nd will coincide with the Nebraska celebration of Nebraska books. The Nebraska Center for the Book each year puts together a celebration, and that in between those two performances, we will hold the celebration of Nebraska books. It'll be held at the Lead Center as well, so people will have the opportunity to attend either the 2 o'clock performance and then come to the celebration, or come to the celebration and attend the 7:30 performance. So you might keep that in mind if you're planning to come to Lincoln for the celebration of Nebraska books. That's a great event too, and we always celebrate at that time the winners of the Nebraska Book Awards. Let me tell you first of all, before I forget though, who the sponsors are of the Nebraska Book Festival. Each year the Nebraska Book Festival is presented by the Nebraska Center for the Book, the Nebraska Humanities Council, and the Nebraska Library Commission. This year we have major support from the Nebraska State Historical Society. They are offering us the use of the museum, the Nebraska History Museum at 15th and P Street, free of charge, and we appreciate that support very much. In addition, we have support from the Nebraska Arts Council, the Nebraska Cultural Endowment, Nebraska Repertory Theater, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, the Nebraska Ears Collective, a Novel Idea Bookstore, New Vibe Juice and Java, and of course University of Nebraska Press. As I mentioned before, they always support us in One Book, One Nebraska, and they support us in this book festival and our celebration as well. So I wanted to make sure and mention all of these people and organizations because we couldn't do it without them, that is for sure. Other thoughts? I know what I was going to do. I was going to show you let's see if I can find it. The Nebraska Book Festival Facebook page. And we've had...
Actually, it's half a face.
It's only half a Facebook page. Yeah, we only get Wendy Townley over on the right. We only get her glasses. But Facebook has been an opportunity for us to interact with a variety of people who are audience and potential audience for the book festival. And as you can see, we have a lot of comments in here about who some of the writers are, what some of the workshops are. But we also have some information about other things that are going on across the state. For example, here's Happy Children's Book Week. And this is, I think, just something that if you're on Facebook, you might want to favorite it and like it and pay attention to it, because I think there'll be information up for the next few weeks before the festival. We do have time, and I had hoped we would, to ask Ted to read for a little bit out of the book, and also to ask Virginia to read from the play.
All right.
So I'm hoping we can do that. And also I wanted to mention, I always try to remember to mention this, if you have any questions either about the book festival, the performances coming up, One Book, One Nebraska, any of those things, please type those questions in your chat box. Or if you'd rather use your microphone, just go ahead and type a note to Krista to open up your microphone and you can chat with us live and in person. Doesn't feel so live and in person, does it, when you're sitting in this hot box?
Sure it does.
We have to say that it's a little warm in here, so if any of us pass out, you'll just know it's because we don't have any air conditioning in the Library Commission today. We're like pioneers.
I might read this. There's a passage here that I use often when I'm talking to students about writing, about the importance of showing up for work and trying to write a little bit every day. A little bit of good comes out of just about everything. The day before yesterday, I dropped a heavy wooden garage door on my head while I was pounding on a stuck roller, and it knocked me flat when the pin in the roller sheared off. It cut up my head a little, but would have really done some serious damage if it hadn't been for an old high-backed lawyer's desk that was sitting beneath it and that took most of the weight. A desk I've been wanting to get out of the garage but hadn't yet gotten around to finding another place for. I wanted to fix the door right away, though we seldom use it. He who postpones is worse than the lazy. It's one of my Czech quotes. So yesterday I went to Earl Carter Lumber in Lincoln, having been told that they stock rollers for doors like mine. The person who helped me was a big helpful man in his late 50s, and making conversation while he looked for the parts, he mentioned how good our weather has been. We'll be pitching horseshoes this weekend, he said. The kids will be bringing the shoes and skates. I told him that I'd had an uncle with cerebral palsy who couldn't talk well or walk well, but who could pitch horseshoes with the best. Isn't that great, he said. You know, I had an uncle who was tri-state horseshoe champion 3 years running. I asked him one time how I could get as good as he was, and he said, son, you got to pitch 100 shoes a day. And I keep telling students, that it's so important pitching your 100 shoes a day, and failing day after day after day, because if a writer waits for inspiration, the chances are that he's going to be at the gas station when it comes, or getting in the dentist chair, You have to be there every day for a little while, trying to put some time in. And that's how I've used that passage. I try to write every morning, and I have for many, many, many years now, and I fail day after day after day after day to write anything that's of any significance or anything that I really like much at all. But on those a couple days a month when something good happens, had I not been sitting there, it wouldn't have happened at all.
Mm-hmm.
I would have missed it completely. So showing up for work is really essential for writers.
Yeah, some of you know this. Ted was my poetry writing instructor when I was in college 1.5 million years ago. And one of the things that I definitely took away from that, it was a seminar experience, so it was very intense. We wrote every day. We brought our work to class every morning. We shared it with our co-writers, other fellow students, and we talked about each other's work, and then we left and wrote again. And I guess one of the things that I took away from that, and I have never forgotten, is that I have a lot of bad stuff in me that I need to get out so that one good thing can get out there too. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that you don't get all that stuff that's just not good enough out unless you write and write and write and write. And sometimes, I think about that when I'm writing a news release or something, and I think, hey, I don't feel like doing this today, but I'm glad to be getting this out of me so I can get something good out tonight.
Well, I also paint and draw, and I fail even more often at that, But I am used to failure because I've been doing this writing stuff for so long that it doesn't bother me to spend 2 or 3 hours trying to do a little drawing somewhere and have it just completely look awful by the time it's done, because I know that eventually something better will happen.
It takes a little faith.
Yeah, probably a lot of faith.
I guess I like to ask Virginia if you wouldn't mind reading a little bit from the play, so we can get a flavor for how Ted's words might translate.
I don't mind at all, but I want to tell you that that's one of my very favorite parts of the play, is that particular passage that you just read, which is pretty much verbatim, except that we have a man standing behind the counter at Earl Carter, played by Kathleen, of course, but but for me, I think that it's really all artists. You know, I think you have to apply yourself, you know, and that's what I would say for me is the only way I can get anything done is by putting the seat of my pants in a chair and doing the work. That's what has to happen. And so I love that part. It's very inspirational to me. The part that I'm going to read is, most of the play is actually Ted's words. Almost all of it. I would say 95% of it is Ted's words. Except that Paul wrote some songs that are inspired by something that Ted has written. And one of the things I'm going to read you there are probably 4 songs in the piece. The rest of them are actually Ted's writing, set to music. But there are 4 different lyrics. And one of them is about the time, reminiscing about playing with glass animals. When Ted was young, he had a bunch of little miniature animals that were given to him. And he spent a lot of time playing with them, a lot of time imagining and you know, building that wonderful imagination that he has in a way of looking at the world. Anyway, this is a song by Paul Amandus called Tiny Elephant. My uncle, and I'm not going to sing it, my uncle was a mountain who loved miniatures and nephews. He gave a china elephant to me to keep for life, who was pink and shiny as the sea, and with Pinky's tiny trunk round me, we'd fly across the galaxy and end up on an atom. So sail on, tiny elephant, to ports of pink china, where the creatures are all miniature and glass. Tell them all about the quiet boy you sailed with from 9th Street, and how we traveled all the planets on a patch of Iowa grass. My days and weeks with Pinky flew, till one day he went missing. Imagining was impossible alone. But Tux the penguin came along and said, let's dig to old Hong Kong, but first we'll sing a farewell song to Pinky on his journey. We sang Sail on, Tiny Elephant, to ports of pink china, where the creatures all are miniature and glass. Tell them all about the quiet boy who sailed with from 9th Street, how we traveled all the planets on a patch of Iowa grass. My boyhood home's the same, except a small girl rules the backyard. Her father said he dug up some glass figures from the garden. His daughter spent most every day with these old tiny toys at play, and as I slowly drove away, I warbled this refrain. I sang, sail on, tiny elephant, to ports of pink china, where the creatures are all miniature and glass. Tell them all about the quiet boy you sailed with from 9th Street, and how we traveled all the planets on a patch of Iowa grass.
Great.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear him sing it.
Pinky the elephant got stolen by my friend Larry, who buried it under their porch.
Oh, no.
Because his adventures were so spectacular. And then Tux the penguin came along and took up right where Pinky left off, and it was a Pyrrhic failure, I guess. You know.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I love it so much just because it invokes my childhood, and for each of us that reads that section,
And in what other play do we have tiny glass animals?
I can't think.
Glass menagerie.
The glass menagerie.
Yes.
Yes.
Very important. Imagination.
I didn't have a unicorn, but
Seems like something else, too. I'll have to think about that.
the late Robert Knoll told me that he attended one of the very first performances of the Glass Menagerie and sat right behind Julia Kazan and Tennessee Williams, who were rewriting the script in the front row.
Oh, for
My
heaven's
goodness,
sakes.
what a wonderful story.
And where did that take place?
New York.
New York. Yeah. Cool. other thoughts about either the upcoming book festival or the events in October, the performance of Local Wonders the Musical?
Well, I think these book festivals are marvelous. You know, I mean, they really call some attention to Nebraska writing and Nebraska reading, even more important. And you know, I haven't been to every one of them. I've been gone a lot, but you know, I'm always delighted. And you know, you people who work on this thing put in an awful lot of time for no reason other than the love of literature. You know, and you're given a lot of credit for that.
Well, thank you. You're a veteran of many of these, so you know what they're like.
I always say that theater people have an overactive share gene. They want to share stuff with other people. Librarians do too.
Yes, yes, that's very true.
And poets do too. I mean, it's just like this. I'm looking at the world in this particular way, and I need. It's not really just a desire. It's a need to share that with other people so that they can stand beside you and see what you're seeing and think what you're thinking.
We have had such a good response to this festival in the last few years. We've had so many people say that they're so pleased that it focuses on Nebraska writing. They say that they're pleased that it has real writers coming to interact with their readers. I know people love the writers' workshops. It's an opportunity to see if you do have a book in you. A lot of people think they do. A lot of people think they've got a story to tell. A lot of people do have a story to tell. And that the opportunity to hear that writer encourage you and give you ideas about how to get that story out, that's tremendous. It's a great opportunity, and it is free of charge, which is nice that we've been able to keep it that way through our great supporters and sponsors. So that's been fun. Are there any questions from the audience or suggestions?
Anybody have anything? You can go ahead and type it in to your questions, or let me know. I can unmute a microphone for you if you want to talk.
Since we have a minute, I've been wanting to ask Ted to share a little bit more about his experience writing a children's book. The Bag in the Wind book came out last year, and I know that was a new adventure for you.
Well, you know, there is one pretty interesting story connected with it. I had written this manuscript about 10 years ago, and it involves a plastic bag that blows out of a dump and is used by different people for different things and so on. And a couple of children's book publishers looked at the manuscript and said that they liked it, but one of them, Orchard Books, said that they had done a book similar to this not too long before and that kind of thing. You know? So there was sort of lukewarm on it. And Ruth Rosecrans Hoffman, who was a noted illustrator of children's books, who grew up in Denton, Nebraska, had come back here in retirement with her husband, and he had subsequently died, and Ruth was in a nursing home in David City, and I made a point of once a month going out to visit Ruth. And so I took the manuscript up there one day, and I said, would you mind taking a look at this and tell me what you think is wrong with it? I said, you know, it needs some help. And she read it sitting right there, and she said, Ted, there's too much description in this book. That the description is done by the illustrator. You don't do that in your writing. You don't say that the little girl was wearing a red polka dot dress with a white lace collar and new shoes. The illustrator gets to make all those decisions. So I went back to the manuscript and I cut out all that descriptive material, which amounted to probably 1 out of every 4 words, because I'm a very descriptive writer. Mm-hmm. And then I took it to what happened was I had gone to the National Council of Teachers of English convention, and Candlewick Press was there, and they had a dinner one night, and I was invited to go to the dinner. And at dinner, I told this woman I was sitting across from about this experience that I'd had with Ruth and how much she taught me about this. And this woman said, well, why don't you let us look at that manuscript? And they took it right away. And they've subsequently taken another book of mine.
Oh, another children's
book. I love illustrated books, and I really love the notion of writing for children. My friend Naomi Shihab Nye, the poet and lecturer, when I told her I was doing this kind of writing, she said, Ted, children's books are the most important books, which I think is really wonderful. And,
Very cool.
And the nice thing about them compared to writing poetry is that children's literature is relatively free of theory and opinion, whereas poetry is so completely weighed down. I don't know whether that's true in drama or not these days.
Oh, certainly. Critical.
Theory is just such a burden, you know. And although there are people who write critical articles about children's literature, it isn't so paralyzing. And so I intend to do more of it. I've got a couple of other ideas for things, and it's a very pleasurable thing. I mean, to get that book, you know, to have them send me that book, you know, in my contributors' copies, and you know, it's beautifully illustrated. It's just a wonderful experience, you know. Which, by the way, excuse me, I don't think that there's any way ever that children's books will be replaced by Kindles.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you possibly replace the experience of turning those pages and then not only doing that, but then turning them back to look at what was here and then going forward again? I mean, you can't, I mean, you can do that mechanically with a Kindle, but you can't get that experience of that object, that book, with those pages that turn.
Well, and I think especially the board books that are used with very young children, they're just so practical. They're so very practical because they're so sturdy.
Well, and they're often different shapes, and so space has a lot to do with the illustrations and looking for a long time and going back and forth. They're just such a tactile thing that
I hadn't
seems
thought about
so
that.
important.
Think about children's books and the format, whether it be landscape or portrait size format, you know, that really reflects on the story and the way that the story is seen and how the story moves forward. Interesting. Well, I wanted you to talk about that, Ted, because I know that at one point in time you had a publisher say, well, I think we could probably use this book, but maybe we wouldn't have any words at all in it.
That was, I forgot that part of the story. They had accepted the book, and then, you know, months went by. They paid me in advance and everything, and so it was theirs to do it as they wished. And she wrote me, she said, we're going to go ahead with it, but we decided we don't want any words in it at all. And then they had second thoughts, obviously, and we went back.
Because that was at the time when you were Poet Laureate of the United States, and so they have a book by the Poet Laureate of the United States with no words at all in the book.
But we decided to fire you.
It's a different kind of laureateship, I suppose.
But it was still your idea.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is there. But I think that for all of you that are interested in children's literature, the book festival will offer a couple of opportunities like this one to talk to Ted about this book, to hear Ted read from this book, as well as James Solheim's book that he, let's see, The Diary of a Young Journalist is the name of his most recent book. And he'll be reading from that, and also, as I said, he and his daughter will have some kind of performance.
I'm going to take advantage of this moment and put in a plug also for the Plum Creek Literacy Festival.
Oh yes, please
in
do.
the fall in October, that I hope everybody in the state knows about, but I don't think they do. You know, which is really the premier children's literature event in the country. I think.
It's
I don't
marvelous.
think anybody does anything like that. And it's usually, you know, it's a couple of days. The high school kids come on Friday, but it's a one-day deal like our book festival, and you know, it's terrific.
And they bring in lots of children's authors. They also have an event, a piece of the event that's for teachers, which is remarkable because it gives them an opportunity to really get in depth in some of this literature and to really enjoy it. Yeah, it's very well attended. They have, I think, 500, 600 people attend over the 3-day period. So, yeah, it's a tremendous, and it's always in Seward, at Concordia College, the Plum Creek Literary Festival in October.
It's not free, I think. I think the Saturday events are like $50 or something like that, but still, it's well worth it.
Yeah, it is a very, very prestigious festival.
I could plug Nebraska Repertory Theater.
I think that would be an excellent idea.
I'd love to.
Please tell us about the rep.
We're doing our summer season, which opens July 7th We do 3 shows every summer, and it's a combination of professional actors and designers and directors and community directors, designers, actors, directors, everything. And
Students.
Also students, yes. And it exists to provide quality theater for the region and also to be a professional laboratory for our students. Sometimes the very first professional job that they ever have. We do 3 shows in rotating rep. The first one, Church Basement Ladies, opens July 7th. The second one is Becky's New Car. It opens on the 14th. And finally, 39 Steps, the theatricalized version of the Hitchcock movie, opens on the 21st.
Wow.
And then they all 3 play each of the weekends. They play throughout, but on the last 3 weekends you can see any one of them. So if you came to Lincoln, for example, on Friday afternoon you can see Friday night show, then a different show Saturday night, and a different show Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock.
And these I've attended several of these performances over the years, and they are just really first rate. I think Church Basement Ladies sounds like fun.
It's been a hit all over the country, and it's a very silly musical based on growing up Lutheran. The book Growing Up Lutheran. It takes place in the 60s, and I'm directing it, and I can't wait. I love, it'll be wonderful to be working on something that's so silly and heartwarming too. And Becky's New Car, the one I haven't talked about, is a fairly new comedy by Stephen Dietz, an excellent playwright whose work is being done, who has written many plays, and they're being done all over the country. This is a comedy about a woman, a middle-aged woman who wants to change her life, and she wishes she could change her life, and then something happens and her life changes completely, and then it goes completely out of control. But
that sounds familiar.
It's a great comedy. And then we do destinations also on Tuesday nights. 2 of them. One of them, and that's where we first read Local Wonders. The ones we're doing this year are on the 26th. Former student of ours, Abby Miller, is coming back. She's in LA and is in an indie rock singing group, and she's coming back to do a show for us and talk about her life in LA. And then on August 2nd, one of our equity actresses that's coming from Chicago, Deb Witasic, is doing a piece, a one-woman show that we're helping her develop about her dad. Her dad was a mechanic in Detroit and a saxophonist, and he got Alzheimer's and came and lived with her. And it's not a downer. Mm-hmm. It's about a daughter and a father saying goodbye, moving on that journey, and I think that's going to be really fun too. That's one of the things that we've been doing lately, is providing opportunities for performers to develop one-person shows that they can begin here, and we provide them with a director and an audience, and then they can go off and use them again.
Oh, that's great.
And
so you're not taking the summer off?
no, heavens. www.unl.edu/rep. And tickets are available at the Leeds Center box office.
We're not, no.
Nope, I can't do that, Okay.
All of the links and the websites we've gone to today will be posted when we put the recording up. So
Fabulous.
you'll be able to have all that information there.
Uh-oh. Was I not supposed to do that?
Hang on.
Very dramatic, isn't it?
No problem.
Okay. We've got dueling keyboards over here, so it's a little tough. Well, thank you all. If you don't have any questions for Ted or for Virginia or for me about the book festival, please tell your friends and tell your customers in your libraries about the festival and about the performances coming up. Feel free to email me if you think of a question that you have, or if you have trouble registering or anything, if you decide to register for the writers' workshops. Thanks very much for joining us today. And what are we going to do next week?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, thank you so much, everyone, Ted and Virginia, Mary Jo, for setting this all up. This was great. As I said, it's all been recorded, so you can watch this all again later if you need to, or if you weren't here. Just bring it back to the book festival page for. Next week on NCompass Live, I hope you'll join us. We have actually Sally Snyder, who's our Children's and Young Adults Library Services Coordinator here at the Library Commission, and Sarah Dale, Librarian, Youth Services Librarian from Lincoln City Libraries. They attended a workshop in February about a NASA space science workshop about Jupiter, where there's a lot of programs and things that librarians and teachers can use in their activities and demonstrations with their students and teens and children in their libraries. They're going to show what they learned there. So it's NASA Space Science Workshop, Explore Jupiter's Family Secrets. So that's our NCompass Live topic for next week. I hope you'll join us. Doesn't look like we have any questions or comments. Oh, thank yous coming in from the audience. Yes, and applause type things. So.
Thank yous and applause.
Yes.
Well, yay.
That's wonderful. So thank you very much for attending. We're all wrapped up for today. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.